Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you, my students? I hope that you're happy and healthy and ready for today's lesson, which is the grammar of Unit 4 TV around the world. But before we do that, let's revise what we previously took in the previous lessons about regarding TV programs. We asked some questions here. What kind of television programs do you like? What kinds don't you like? Which programs do you prefer? Do you prefer a drama TV series or maybe a car series, etc.? Sport. Then we took some articles in the lesson and discussed the Jeopardy, the article about the program Jeopardy, the family quiz show. Then we took Hoy. Also, this is a family quiz show. Then we took the National Geographic Channel. We learned a lot about the National Geographic Channel and its documentary movies, documentary series, TV programs, and etc. Then we discussed the CSI, or Crime Scene Investigation TV series, where we solve puzzles and mysteries. The detectives, the police, they solve crimes. Then we discussed Top Gear, the well-known TV program. It's a British program. Also, the last one is Sasuke. It's a Japanese TV show. Then we took the language builder. English speakers often use the term soap opera to refer to programs similar to telenovelas. We knew that by the end that soap operas never end. The stories just evolve over the year. So these are today's objectives for the grammar. The first one is to identify direct object and indirect object in a sentence. So we'll be studying about direct objects and indirect objects. So pay attention to that. The use of for and to before the indirect object. Rearrange words to create direct and indirect object. Use direct and indirect objects to complete stories. Decide whether the words are direct or indirect objects. Find the mistake in a sentence. So we'll be studying today about direct and indirect objects and the use of for and to. So look at the example here. Jack sold the car. Jack sold the car. This is a very regular sentence. What did Jack sell? What's the object here? What did Jack sell? Yes, that's correct. He sold his car. So in this sentence, the car is the direct object of the verb sell. So we have the verb sell, and the direct object for it is the car. What did Jack sell? This is the answer here, his car. Jack sold the car to John. Jack sold the car to John. Jack sold John the car. Notice here we have two objects, John and the car. So who did Jack sell the car to? Who did Jack sell the car to? We say John. So John here is the indirect object. John here is the indirect object because the direct object is the car. Notice the different positions of the indirect object before or after the direct object and the use of the preposition. We notice here John, you said Jack sold the car to John. Notice the indirect John here is at the end of the sentence. And the second, Jack sold John the car. So when we remove the preposition to, the indirect object change its position in the sentence. We'll be studying more about that now. Here, direct and indirect objects. A direct object is a noun or a pronoun that receives the action of a verb. A direct object, it's a noun or a pronoun that received the action of the verb. Let's call it the receiver, for example. It's the noun or a pronoun that receives the action of the verb. A direct object answers the question what or who. For example, here we say John wrote the poem. John likes his new teacher. So this is the answer to what or who. John wrote the poem. John likes his new teacher. On the other hand here, an indirect object tells us to or for whom the action is done. An indirect object tells us to or for whom this action is done. There must be a direct object for there to be an indirect object. So wherever there's an indirect object, there has to be a direct object with it, but it's not vice versa. For example here, John wrote the poem for his mother. John wrote the poem for his mother. John read the poem to the audience. So you notice here that we have two objects. The second one, John read the poem to the audience. So John read the poem. So the poem is the receiver of the action, the verb, the action read. To the audience, this is what the action done. This is the people who was the action done for. So this is the direct and indirect object. If there is a preposition, the indirect object goes after the direct object. Notice here again, if there is a preposition, what happens here? The indirect object goes after the direct object. So this here tells us the order of the sentence. She gave the remote control to me. She gave the remote control to me. We notice the preposition to. So wherever there is a preposition, the indirect object goes after the direct object. The second part here, if there is no preposition to or for, the indirect object goes before the direct object. She gave me the remote control. Notice the difference here. Wherever there is no preposition, the indirect comes before the direct. She gave me the remote control. So me here is the indirect, the remote control is the direct object. When the direct object is a pronoun, the pronoun goes before the indirect object. Again, pay attention. When the direct object is a pronoun, not a noun, a pronoun, the pronoun goes before the indirect object. Notice the example here. She gave it to me. She gave it to me. So it here is the direct object. It's a pronoun. It's regarding the remote control. It to me. So the pronoun goes before the indirect object, which is in this sentence is me. To and for before the indirect objects. To and for before the indirect objects. We use to if the indirect object is receiving something. We use to if the indirect object is receiving something. Also use to with these verbs: bring, confess, give, hand, lend, offer, pass, pay, promise, read, sell, send, show, take, tell, and write. So we use to with these verbs. Again, we use to if the indirect object is receiving something, and we use it with these verbs. For example here, will you pass a pillow to me? Will you pass? Pass is one of the verbs here. Will you pass a pillow to me? Not for me, to me. Note that the preposition to is not used when the indirect object comes before the direct object. Again, note that the preposition to is not used when the indirect object comes before the direct object. Will you pass me a pillow? Will you pass me a pillow? We don't put to. There is no to. If the indirect comes before the direct, we don't use the preposition to. Will you pass me? Me, this is the indirect. A pillow, this is the direct. So we don't use to here. For example here, Ali wrote a letter to Adil and told him about our trip. Ali wrote a letter to Adil. So notice the direct and indirect here. And told him about our trip. The second example, Ali didn't have time to write, so Ali wrote the letter for him. Adil didn't have time to write. He was busy. So Ali wrote the letter for him. In which sentence does Adil get a letter? So in which sentence, is it this one or this one? In which sentence does Adil get a letter? So in the first sentence says Ali wrote a letter to Adil. The letter was sent to Adil and told him about our trip. So in the second sentence, Ali writes the letter for Adil as a favor, because we know maybe Adil is busy, so he asked Ali to write the letter for him as a help, as a favor, instead of him. So this is the use of the preposition for. We use for if the indirect object is benefiting from some kind of help, as Adil did. Again, we use for if the indirect object is benefiting from some kind of help. We use for with these verbs: book, build, buy, cook, find, get, keep, leave, make, order, and reverse. So we use for if someone is helping someone else, someone is benefiting from someone else. We use for if the indirect object, the indirect, not the direct, the indirect object is benefiting from some kind of help. And we use it with these verbs. Pay attention to the example here. My parents bought a new house, a new TV for me, or house, whatever. My parents bought a new TV for me. Note the preposition for is not used when the indirect object comes before the direct object, like the preposition to. If the indirect comes before the direct, we don't use the preposition. Either it's to or for. His parents are buying him a new TV for his graduation. His parents are buying him a new TV for his graduation. With some verbs, the indirect object always follows the direct object, and the preposition for cannot be omitted. Again, with some verbs, the indirect object always follows the direct object, and the preposition for cannot be omitted. We cannot remove it, like answer, cash, change, close, fix, open, prepare, pronounce, and translate. So with these verbs, we cannot omit for, we cannot remove it, and the indirect object always follow the direct object. Can you please translate the program for me? Can you please translate the program for me? So the indirect object is following the direct object, the program and for me, and we cannot omit for here in this example. Let's take some exercise here just to cement our understanding to this lesson. Complete the conversation with for and to. Complete the conversation with for and to. We have the conversation between Alex and Umar. What happened in last night's episode of Fast and Safe? I recorded it. Yes, it was great. So in these gaps, we'll put for or to. Number one, I recorded it to you or for you. It was great. Yes, excellent. For you, as a help, as a gesture. Tell me about it. Umar, well, Alan wrote an email, Ahmed. Yes, very good, to Ahmed. So the email is going to Ahmed. In it, he confessed, very good, he confessed to him that he had tampered with the engine of the car and he was driving. Ahmed kept reading the email himself. Yes, to himself. So you could be the recipient of the verb. It's okay. He couldn't believe that Alan would do such a thing. Then Alan tried to make up for it. He got a fantastic car, yes, for Ahmed as a help again to drive in this show. He bought a new helmet, yes, for him. He even sent a limo, Ahmed's house. Very good. To Ahmed's house. He even sent a limo to Ahmed's house to drive him to the studio. Alex, what did Ahmed do? Umar said, well, he was angry at first. Then he demanded that Alan make a public statement on the air and promise that he would never do anything like that for him or to him. Yes, to him again. So now we know when to put to and when to put for. The second exercise here, rearrange the words to create two sentences. So we have to rearrange these words to create two sentences. Pay attention, not one, two sentences. One with the indirect object placed after the direct object, and the other one, the indirect object placed before the direct object. So we have to switch the direct and the indirect object places. We'll write two sentences where the places are switched. The first one here is already done. I sent the TV schedule, John. We have two sentences. I sent John the TV schedule. I sent the TV schedule to John. So the first one here, I sent John. The indirect object John came first here. Then the TV schedule, the direct object. The second one, I sent the TV schedule. The TV schedule is the direct object to John. John here is also the indirect object. So in each sentence, we'll have to do this. The first one, the comedian told the audience a joke. So do as we did in the first one. Yes, the comedian told the audience a joke. The comedian told the joke to the audience. So the audience here is the indirect object. Excellent. A glass of water, the talk show host poured the celebrity. So now you got the hang of it. Can you continue? Yes, that's correct. The talk show host poured the celebrity a glass of water. The talk show host poured a glass of water for the celebrity as a gesture, as a help to him. Number 3, the sitcom dad gave his wife his wallet. So, yes, the sitcom dad gave his wife his wallet. The sitcom dad gave his wallet to his wife. So now we know that his wife here is the indirect object. Continuing here, the number 4, his cheese, the cat, the cartoon mouse offered. Cartoon mouse. Oh no, we know. Now we have cat and mouse cartoon. We know what cartoon this is. So his cheese, the cat, the cartoon mouse offered. Yes, excellent. The cartoon mouse offered the cat his cheese. The cartoon mouse offered his cheese to the cat. So now we know the cat is the indirect. Number 5, the host passed the microphone an audience member. Very good. Now you got the hang of it, really. The host passed an audience member the microphone. The host passed the microphone to an audience member. What about number 6? The judges offered the contestants advice. This is an easy one. Very good. The judges offered the contestant advice. The judges offered advice to the contestants. Another chance, host offered the contestant. This is number 7. Very good. The host offered the contestant another chance. The host offered another chance to the contestant. It's similar as number 6. Number 8, the chef made the studio audience a dessert. The chef made the studio audience a dessert. Whenever you answer this kind of question, always notice the direct and indirect object. When you know them, now you know how to rearrange the sentence as you like. Yes, this is correct. The chef made the studio audience a dessert. The chef made a dessert for the studio audience. And here, exercise C, look at the pictures. Use your own ideas to complete the stories. Use direct and indirect objects. So you have to make up a story from the pictures here. We have Jamal and Ahmed. Jamal had spent weeks planning for a poster for ecotourism in his country. So try to make up a story about Jamal making a poster about ecotourism, and remember to use direct and indirect objects. On the other picture here, Ahmed's parents were proud of him, of his achievement, and wanted to do something special for him. Maybe his achievement was that he graduated from high school, from university. So try to make up a story about Ahmed, and remember to use direct and indirect objects. Here's a fun fact that many people assume that teens are watching less TV now because they spend more time doing things like playing video games and surfing the internet. However, a recent study says that this isn't true. They thought that teens were busy with the internet and playing video games. The study found that in the last 5 years, teens have been watching 6% more TV. On average, teens spend more than 104 hours a month watching TV. They spend an average of about 12 hours online. And with that, we reach the end of this lesson. See you next lesson, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم.